All right. What is going on, everyone? Welcome back to the Wok and Tok podcast, episode 3. You know who we are by now, I hope, if you are a true fan. But today, I think we'll get right into it because it's a fun topic. We're gonna open it. I think just a recap of the Barbie movie and what we thought about it, what we got out of it, and then open it to a bigger discussion on um, gender roles, kind of relationships, and who we are, who we have been. Yeah, just I guess our dynamic between men and women. Um, but yeah, do you wanna summarize what the movie was without spoilers for?
Yeah, sure. We both saw the Barbie movie recently. I mean, obviously it came out within the past couple months. There's been a lot of talk about the movie in general. For those of you who don't know, two main characters, Barbie and Ken, of course. That's how it's been. Um, However, in the movie and just kind of in real life, it's always been Barbie first, and Ken. There was a line in the movie that says Ken only has a good day when Barbie looks at him, and Barbie has a good day every day. So just that seeking attention and like validation that Ken needs from Barbie, and it kind of progresses throughout the movie where Ken is trying to get any sort of attention he can. Barbie doesn't want to give it. Then there's a swap to where now Ken gets all the attention and Barbie feels left out. And so it's a nice little dichotomy of how there has to be some sort of compromise, I think, and at least that's what one of the things that I take out of the movie. Obviously, it's done in like a very comedic way, so it makes the movie interesting, and it's comedic both ways, right? It's not only picking on one side, and I think that's what makes it kind of effective in its construction.
Yeah, um, yeah, it was good little recap. I think so. Obviously, like you said, those are the characters. But regarding the overall message, yeah, I think you one of the things I liked the most about it that you mentioned was that it's pretty fair as far as both sides regarding men and women and at least roles and stuff. And I didn't feel like it attacked too heavily onto one side or the other. I think it did lean more in towards feminism, but I think there was a lot of truth. Anytime anyone was like, "Oh, how was the movie?" I was like, "There's a lot of truth to it." I think as far as just a entertainment movie, um, the plot wasn't the best, but as far as a movie that makes you think or made me think at least, I really enjoyed it. Just because I think, especially in today's day and age and all that, it is a question that I do ask myself a lot. Is the question of what essentially how do I want my marriage to be? Also, who do I want to be by that time? Um, and what is the distribution going to be? Because obviously we can talk about way back when Barbie was invented and all that. It was a lot different than now, and then now you have all the movements and stuff that are pushing for this or that or more this or less that or whatever it is. And yeah, I think it was very digestible, that it presented it in a satirical way that was funny, and then on top of that was wacky and weird and just dystopian enough that you could kind of escape the real world and just kind of dissect the messages one at a time as they presented in the movie. So, anything off the top of your head? Any topic that they presented that you want to start with?
I mean, I just want to say, going into the movie, I didn't really know anything about it. I thought
Mm-hmm.
it was gonna be like a kids movie, to be honest, because naturally Barbie is meant for younger girls, I guess, is the target audience there. Not the case, not really the case. I mean, there's a lot of like you mentioned, high level concepts and stuff like that. Um, I mean, I think you know you mentioned about how it's kind of both ways. At least portrayed both ways in the movie. I mean, what do you think? How do you think that is, and is it true in the real world right now? Just some kind of commentary on that.
Yeah, is it true? I think so. Just as far as like, I think even we could start with just what is the message to say. I think there were a couple. Like I said, I like how it played on a duality in the sense that it had a message, I think, for the guys, and then also for the Kens and for the Barbies, if you could say. Um, for the Barbies, it was, the idea that not everything has to be perfect, and that, a kind of a message of acceptance that it doesn't need to be perfect, essentially. But I think for the guys, I still have a hard time kind of if I had to pinpoint one message, because I think there was a lot. I think there was a part of it where the part that was most interesting to me was the uh, the relationship between, like, just the idea of, like, so from the movie, which I'm sure you've heard by now, it's like I am Kenough is like the phrase. Um, if you haven't seen the movie, I'm sure you've heard that. I hope you have. But anyway, it's the idea that, like, he doesn't need to be perfect for Barbie, and that he is, enough. All the Kens are enough for Barbie, regardless of, or just how they are. And I did like that. I thought it was interesting because you don't hear that a lot of times, and that is the biggest takeaway as an umbrella that I liked from the movie, is that um, it was it kind of it highlighted and gave a voice to males in relationships and dating, and, well, yeah, we'll just leave it at relationships for now. And then also kind of gave a different version of a similar message to the females. And so I don't know. I enjoyed that because I don't think guys a lot of times are able to express that part of it, where it's like, I know, at least in my experience, we try a lot to be impressive. Um, and not that I would say it goes unnoticed, but it's not as talked about as females trying to, physically do themselves up aesthetically, but then also just, um, personality wise and whatnot too. And so I guess we can start there as far as what do you think for presenting yourself in a relationship? Like, what, like, if you had to break that down, that idea.
Well, obviously, everyone wants to present their best self. Um, One thing that I've noticed a lot of the times is that after a while, you get lazy and you don't feel the need that you have to try anymore. Um,
Yeah.
and I think that's, at least in my experience, that's where a lot of the issues come in,
Hmm.
where you kind of, either you or your partner takes the other one for granted, and there's not that extra, like, it just kind of gets stale, it gets boring, you start fighting about things that don't matter at all, like literally just completely random things that have no impact on anything. um and things just get rough. And you know I think that a lot of the times it's better to just, you just have to present yourself good, and I mean, good initially, but you have to also present the bad parts of yourself too, because if you want this sort of relationship to kind of go forward and move forward, you can't be hiding the bad parts of you, because they're going to come out eventually. And if
Yeah.
the person that you're in a relationship with can't handle them, it's better to get them out now or earlier, rather than, when you're 2 or 3 years into a relationship and, you're thinking about taking next steps.
Yeah. And I think one way that it's the phrasing has come up for me recently is, like, if you had to make a resume for your um self, essentially, in a relationship, or, like, if you had to apply for a relationship per se, what would be on there as far as attributes go, as far as history, as far as everything you put on a resume. What would you put on yours, to whoever I'm talking to. And then also, how does that kind of change over time, as far as, like you said, when you start getting complacent and you start, um yeah, I mean, you get relaxed, you get comfortable. I think in large is healthy for people, because you shouldn't feel on edge, right? But
Right.
on the other end, that spark, kind of, that's how I think, because everyone always talks about, like, where does the spark go, or how does it disappear. I think a big part of it is trying to be your best self when you're trying to, excuse me, impress someone, or date, or look good when you go out on a weekend or something. You want to be your best self possible, as like I said, like, physically presenting, as your best self, and then also personality wise, you want to be able to say, I do this, 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 and this. I'm studying to be this. I'm, my future or my drive is this. But when you get in a relationship, there's obviously that comfort that lowers the literal need to be as impressive. And I think that that is the spark, is trying to impress one another. So yeah, and I think that is something that applying, like, going back to the movie, is counterintuitive to the message in the movie, because on one hand, yes, you are enough. There needs to be a line to that grind set of, like, I do this amount of things. But on the other hand, you don't want to get complacent and bored in a relationship. Um, because I think, yeah, that's when it starts to go bad. People start to isolate in their own beliefs. When those arguments happen, it's very divisive, because it splits two people into who started it, who continued it, who didn't respond good enough, just all that kind of stuff. Um,
And it
but I
brings up
think
past
that's
stuff
what,
too.
say again.
It brings up stuff from the
Yeah,
past as
bringing up stuff from
well.
the past. Yeah,
That's you thought has already been taken care of.
yeah, yeah. And so I don't know. I think that that's an interesting thing to talk about in something like, a podcast, because how do you put that message to the world? Obviously, you can't put it in one form, like a movie or a speech or a podcast, even, that applies to everything. But on this, on the same topic, is there a way to address as much as you can? Because on one hand, yes, like we said, you are Kenough, but on the other hand, don't lose that edge and that drive, if you will. So I don't know. Yeah, what do you think about that?
I think, of course, you want to try to impress people, and I think it's a lot based on your general personality. A lot of people are showy, and
Yeah,
it also depends on how you were raised. Where you want to your presence, you want to impress people with it, or if, for example, you are like a very extroverted person, like you want people to have their attention on you, and because of that, you're gonna go all out, you're gonna be extra, you're gonna you know do the most, I guess, is the best way to put it. So I think it's a lot easier for extroverted people to be kind of putting their best foot forward more times than not, just because of their personality. For an introverted person, it's a lot harder, right? And I think we've probably both seen that sort of thing happen in the past, um, or just in general, where I think both of us are more extroverted people, and maybe partners not so much.
yeah, yeah. Well, just, yeah, in the sense that, um, I think it breaks down to stress management too. It's like, when you know the going gets tough, how do people respond? And also, do you look inwards for support? Do you look outwards for relief? Do you look inwards for blame? And just kind of all that stuff, where I don't know. Yeah, like I said, I break it down, like, where I'm at in life right now is that I bring it back to that resume, right? Where it's like, not, if you are in that kind of breaking point, um, you're there, but at the same time, who do you want to be in that moment anyway? Where it's like, if whether you were there or not, who would you say you want to be? So on your resume of skills, you would say stress management. What does that look like for you? Do I want to be calm? Do I want to not say things I don't mean in a fight or an argument or something? Do I, um, just kind of whatever you would put on there, as far as, do I want to talk things through? Do I want to isolate? Do I want to take time? Do I want to take a break? Is my instinct to run or to not? And things like that, where that's when I think differences, like key differences, really highlight themselves in any relationship. Where, yeah, I don't know. I like the topic though, because I think there's a lot of people who are like, but I love you, and it's like, well, that's, sometimes that's actually from another TV show called New Girl, um, but yeah, it is a topic where it's like, I think one of the most important lessons I've learned just kind of growing up is that sometimes people are incompatible, and sometimes the answer is no, and it just doesn't work. And it's a tough pill to swallow, but at the same time, you wouldn't want to force a relationship that isn't gonna work because you'll be
Yeah,
worse.
right. And just going through that, you going through the how you deal with stress or how you deal with arguments and stuff like that, it it brought something back because I've definitely had situations where my style of problem solving is a lot different than someone else's style of problem solving. And for me it's just like, all right, let's like figure out what went wrong here and why it went wrong and how to fix it. Well, other people's style is to run away and leave it for later, or just forget about it. And for me that doesn't work because you're just pushing problems away. Like, how is that ever going to fix anything,
Yeah,
in my opinion? But
yeah. That's what I'm saying. It's like if you bring it
yeah,
back to an application process, there are certain things you can know off the rip that like,
the
yeah,
deal
this probably,
breakers. Yeah.
which is super interesting to me because I don't know, I think that's so valuable in terms of relationships because there's a lot of things that if we did them, we won't talk about it, but like as an example, if we, I know there's like jokes about it and stuff too, but like if we hired teachers like we did like an NFL draft or something, where it's like if we approach certain things, like if we applied for relationships, if we took parenting tests and stuff, like certain things like that, where um I don't know, it's like if we were more thorough in certain decisions, um I don't know, I feel like there'd be a lot easier times for a lot of people. um
Well, I think that's why people like start doing all that astrology stuff, right? Because they're like, oh, well, this
yeah,
person's gonna be compatible with me, and
I
then
guess,
and how many of the astrology relationships actually work out?
dude, I don't even
It's a
have a
low
number for that.
percentage. It's a low
Here's
percentage.
Well, here's the thing. I think if two people believe in that strong enough, there's a certain level of compatibility anyway. Because I know there's relationships I've been in that like we were compatible or whatever. I don't buy all that stuff. It's not concrete enough to me. And but like there's some that have happened, and you could look back and be like, oh, that's because we were compatible. But there's others that have also worked well that were incompatible. So I don't know, but um, I just have a hard time giving that much power like of compatibility to something out of my control. That's the ego in me. But but I don't know.
Yeah, I
So I'm saying if you
I
have
don't
two
agree with it
personalities
either.
that can give that up, then I don't know. There's something to work with there.
Yeah, but I think generally the personality traits are like relatively accurate, at least for me. I don't know about everyone else, but I have like a lot of the personality traits that like my whatever star sign or whatever it is, like I can see pretty directly correlate to me. But that's a story for another time. I
They're
don't
so
I don't
general though.
I mean, yeah, they are general, but you know, I agree. I agree. I'm with you. Sometimes though it hits different. That's all I'm gonna say. If
Yeah,
you look
no, I
if you
guess
look at the right week, right time, every once
it's
in a while
freaky.
it hits. Every once in a
It's
while it
freaky.
hits. It's streaky. Yeah. Even a broken clock is right twice a day. So, there you go. That can that can uh that can explain that, I guess.
But
But
yeah.
yeah,
Anyway, so what we have next is I don't know. I think I wanted to also consider the side opposite of how I interpreted the Barbie movie, which was if we just take a look at the feminine side or feminist side, um, and just the idea that I don't know. One of the messages I felt was the idea that just males in general are suppressive or dominant. I don't know actually what word would you use for that.
oppressive, not suppressive.
Oh yes, oppressive, or would you say dominant? Not by nature, but by choice. Um, I
I
don't
don't
know.
know.
How would you how do you think the movie? What do you think they were trying to say there about the male nature?
I mean, I think initially in the movie, like the males are super submissive and Like their
Mm,
only goal
right,
was just getting noticed. But
right,
then there's like a switch. There's a switch in the movie where the males are like, "Why are we doing this? Like, we don't need
yeah,
to do this." Um, it's I guess it's not like this other in other places, and
yeah,
then the switch kind of flips where it's like, "Oh, well, now we run the show." You know what I mean? You guys
yeah,
ran the show for forever, and but now it's our turn.
yeah,
And I don't know. I mean, I think a lot of it has to do with ego. You already mentioned it. Um, but I think generally males have bigger egos than females just due to I guess being I guess maybe just naturally.
which is the question, and that's the thing is I think
Yeah.
a lot of people get uncomfortable with this specific part of it because it is the question, I think. Definitely a big one that they brought up is like that's why I phrased it that way, is like, is it by choice or is it by nature, right? Um, but I think that's one of the most important things to talk about.
I think it's situationally dependent
Yeah, for sure.
because obviously like, you know, I, it's something you can turn off, I think, but it's not something you can turn on like cognizantly. I think it naturally gets turned on
And
in the
what
non-sexual way.
specifically?
Just the like I think like the
What did you
dominance.
say?
I
What
said
did you?
in the non-sexual way because I said
Okay.
it naturally gets turned on.
Fair. Anyway, but
I'm saying like just the ego and like the I
yeah.
guess for lack of a better word like the macho ness or whatever, right?
So here's the one part of it. I think a lot of times, and at least for my, I don't know. I just think about like as far as nature goes. It's like when the birds are trying to mate, they do the dance, right? They do the little showboat thing. So to go back to what we were talking about earlier with like the trying to be impressive, that's part of it. And I think for guys, when not only are you trying to be impressive, but above all, and once again, at least in my experience, when I'm trying to compete with that dude or whoever, it does kick up an aggression. Well, yeah, I would say like a little bit of an aggression, a defensiveness, a kind of um like it's a pursuit essentially. And so that is something that kicks up certain energies and certain attitudes and mentalities and just the way that certain guys walk and whatever. And um yeah, I think that's a big part of it where that I mean that's how you're kicking off the relationship. And so that's once again that's in terms of relationship. I think in what the movie was talking about though. So just once again his background for the people who haven't seen it. First of all, go see it. But second of all, um in Barbie Land, it's like I don't think I'm giving anything away here, but in Barbie Land, I think what the movie is trying to say is that the roles are reversed. So women had or Barbies had all the Supreme Court roles.
All the positions of
Barbies,
power.
all the yeah, lawyers, doctors, politicians. Um, I mean,
And the
whatever, anything else, pretty much.
yeah.
Um, and yeah, anyway, they were everything, literally everything, and the Kens were kind of just an accessory to that. And so the reason I liked it is because it was a little exaggerated, at least to how we have it today. And maybe that was true at one point or when Barbies were made. But how we have it today is I think way less than that, where it's like even so sorry, let me finish the first thought. Is that I actually appreciated that because I think it set the precedent of the movie that when we're in Barbie land, girls are guys and guys are girls. And when we're in on Earth, right, in like the real world, everyone is themselves, right? Or the roles are them, the genders are themselves. And so I liked it because first, like I said, it was exaggerated, so it brought up real topics, but was not explicitly pointing fingers at this or that thing. And then second of all, um, I liked it because it also kind of touched on the point that if once again, so the Kens were representing feminism, I think, in a flipped script, if that movement were to get everything it ever asked for, like the Kens did, it would also be too far. Where it's like if we had a fully male or female dominated world, it would be not good. And if we fully flipped the script to another side, it would still be not good. And that there needs to be a compromise, like we talked about. And I don't know. I like those those two parts about the movie. Um, I don't know, just in particular, I think I really like those two parts.
Yeah, that's the same thing with everything. Is that there always has to be a compromise. You know, one group or one person can't be putting in all the work and no work in from the other side. And going back to relationships again, that's another time where a lot of relationships fail. I've seen it in you know in my life where it's just not equal. It's not equal, and whether that has to do with becoming complacent or just being too comfortable or whatever it is, personality, I don't know, but that also can be, you see the same thing, right, where too much of one thing is not good.
Yeah. Or in the relationship, you get like someone's like, "Well, you're always calling the shots." Like, fine, well, you do it. And then it's a full like 180, right? And it's like, no, don't do like it
Yeah, it's
should
like
be.
no,
The
no,
goal
no.
should be the compromise, right? That allows for both. But I did also hear some things too that there because I guess the initial label was that it's like, oh, it's a feminist movie, right? But there were also some other, they call them conspiracies. I think it's just thoughts that it actually was more conservative than not because um, it was kind of calling out that exact thing where it's like if the Kens were representing feminists and the Ken movement was feminism, then it was almost
Shutting it down.
yeah, or criticizing
Yeah.
it that it's like it's a ridiculous thing in the first place is kind of a take on, and I can see it if, like I said, if everything was fully flipped in Barbie Land. And so yeah, I don't know. I think there's a couple just interesting things though, because it's like, okay, then the brainwashed Barbies or whatever. Um Now I'm giving stuff away. But but anyway, but like there's certain things that come up when all of a sudden something flips over that it's like who did they represent then? So um yeah, I don't know, because it was like, oh, it's actually a more conservative message because it's saying that, oh well, things are good how they are anyway, where it's like spoiler, in the end, obviously it still goes back to Barbie's in charge, and there's more of a voice to the Kens, but um it's still Barbie's in charge. So that, to me and to some other people, it begs the question: what is the movie saying about the real world then? Is it better? Not better, but at least how it should be with how we have it. Because I don't know, I really like that aspect to it too, because I think it is such an open-ended question that the movie doesn't explicitly answer.
I mean, I think it goes back to everything that what we've been talking about was there has to be some sort of compromise.
Hmm.
Obviously, we can't have everything one side or the other, and I mean, there's a reason that we're shifting away from that, I think,
Yeah.
because in historically that's how it's kind of been, where it's only male dominated society, and
Hmm.
that has its own set of problems, and now we're working towards kind of e- equating it out, which I think is good. Truthfully, I mean, obviously, I think that's I think it's good, but
Well,
yeah,
that's the question though: is equating it the goal? Are we
I,
trying to 50-50? Because that's the thing in the movie. It's not like at the end of the movie it was like,
yeah, it's not fifty
oh, okay, we're
fifty.
gonna split roles now, because they even throw a line in there where it's like, and this is probably not as deep as I'm gonna make it right now, but it was like, I think one of the Kens is like, and we even want a seat on the Supreme Court,
Mhm.
and then like the Barbie like laughs at it and is like, well, maybe one day, and like makes fun of it. But one person could say, oh, like no, that's just a stab at old conservative males, but other people could say that there's a deeper meaning to that, and I don't know. I if she did intend for it to be a deeper meaning, I appreciate that, because I think there was a lot of underlying. It was a glacier movie where it's like there was a surface level that was not impressive, and then there was just all this underneath though that to me was very thought provoking and impressive. Um, just about the movie in general. But yeah, I think it does make it'll make any insecure male upset and irritated probably, just because
Yeah, for
it
sure.
is it calls out a lot very explicitly and also kind of subtly. Um, that if you are not ready to, because it's not even like, and this is what I liked. It wasn't even like it was a here's a ton of like truth down your throat. Like it wasn't like that. It was, to me, it was more like passive and kind of like, I'm just gonna put this on the table and let's just be honest about this. That's what I liked about it, where it was like it wasn't aggressive and it doesn't call for defensiveness. And so that's what I'm saying. If you're insecure about yourself, you will get defensive, in my opinion, inappropriately. And so I don't know. I appreciated that because I think it also it assigns a role to the viewer of like patience and kind of just, let's just think about it. Like let's just talk about it and think about it. So that was cool. That was cool in my eyes, at least.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I think, you know, I think at first I kind of left the movie like, what did I just watch? Like, what? Like it was very strange, but when you think about it a little more, it's like, oh, this is what they were talking about. Oh, this is what they're talking about. Instead
Yeah.
of it's not just like a movie that's like, oh man, we hate men,
Yeah, yeah.
which
Which like those
can,
ones suck.
yeah, yeah, and there's a lot of that happening right now in
Yeah,
in society, I guess. So
yeah,
it's not like that, even if it may seem like that at first. But
yeah,
take a step back, take a breath,
yeah.
because it'll be
No,
okay.
definitely a lot of cool food for thought. Um, just to kind of think and consider, and like I said, it made me think of certain things like just roles in relationships for male and female or masculine and feminine. Um, and then also in society, just in general about how people carry themselves too. Because I mean, the last thing I think we haven't talked about is probably not the last, but the last one I can think of is also the idea that like, oh, it's a man's world. That I think was another big idea from the movie, that when Ken goes to the real world, he's like, oh my gosh, like I'm respected and like looked up to here and all that stuff. And that was something that, like I said, on one hand you could say, oh, it's a stab at the real world, but on another hand, there is some value to thinking about that, where it's like, okay, if we took the man's world equivalent and made it a woman's world, I guess, how would that play out for each side?
Are you asking me?
I mean, it's just kind of the question. I think it's asking. It is begging.
Yeah. I mean, truthfully, I don't know. I think
Yeah.
it's above my pay grade.
I don't know, dude. I think the biggest thing to me too. This might sound stupid, so bear with me
Heads
while
up.
we talk this through. Heads up. Isn't there some reason that things played out the way they played out beyond just physical differences, like physical strength differences between males and females? Because I think there is a very nice balance to the idea that maybe it is a man's world, but at the end of the day, mothers rule everything and are the most prized thing in any good man I know's life, and that women are still the prize for men. Like there is still a nice balance to it. It's like a subtle, just if we're talking in general about like the there's a word, something structure. It's not infrastructure, but it might be. But essentially of society, where it's like people are like, oh, it's a man's world and they hold all the positions of power. But at the end of the day, if you look at any man, they praise females. And
Well,
who
they're
really has the power?
they're shaped by females too.
Yeah.
Like you mentioned how mothers are like super important, and a lot of the times, the good the good men,
Yeah.
for
The
lack
ones I
of
get along with.
for lack of better terminology here, have good relationships with their mother, or like they were
Just a respect
raised
and a
well, yeah, and they know how to respect other people who are different from them, or whether that's men, women, whatever.
But I just think that's such an important thing because there's a lot of people that bring up this whole idea of like it's a man's world and women are inherently oppressed by this societal structure that we have. But and I'm not like I'm not saying that's not true, but I'm saying there is also like men once again, the ones that we would want to have in society hold
Generally.
women high generally, hopefully, ideally, hold women higher than themselves. And so that's the thing to me that it's like it's not like I mean even from the old days you say like okay, women and children on the boats first or stuff like that where it's like it's more like a no, I won't say that. But yeah, I don't know. There is a
Well,
praise.
well, I mean, and that begs just the question of like, yeah, where do we belong in society, right? And
Mhm.
same thing with relationships, where what is each person's like roles and duties? For example, some people believe that men should be the sole provider
Yeah.
and the women should take care of the house and be
And some
housewives,
people
or
want that, both male and female.
some people want that, yeah. But I think we're sort of moving away from that as we move forward. And I know that's not particularly something I want.
To be a sub,
Um
yeah. Well, I mean, also considering just the simple financial portion of
yeah.
that. Some for a lot of people, it's not even plausible to have one income. You need
Yeah.
two.
Well, that's what I'm saying. I think we're moving away from that because
Yeah.
things are getting more expensive, and because like in order to live any somewhat decently, you need to have two incomes, especially in
Yeah.
big cities, right? Where
Yeah.
things are just too expensive and you can't physically afford to have one income and have
Yeah.
kids or whatever.
Yeah, or even things too, like because for me personally, I don't. I want someone who's actively pursuing something. I don't want someone who because like even if you're actively pursuing being a full time or sorry, yeah, well, a stay at home, whatever, where it's like you're going to be doing this or that. I don't know. I want someone that um, has passions and hobbies and things like that. And I think maybe in old times it was a decision made for the female that they couldn't do that. But I think today that given once again ideally the opportunity to have a choice to work or not, um, I want it to be an active choice. I think it's outdated to for anyone to be like, "Oh, I'm going to make the decisions for my wife." It's like that's so lame, like and insecure. Where it's like, why don't you want someone who thinks for
Yeah.
themselves in that way?
Right.
Where it's that's a very important discussion that I would have from man to man. Where it's like, why would someone ever want that? Because it's like when I meet people who say that, it's so confusing to me because I'm like, that's so much. First of all, you're signing up for a lot because you're doubling the amount of decisions you have to make in a day. But second of all, that's so like where's the connection?
Well,
Like
it
where's
it comes back to ego, right?
yeah, right. Yeah, exactly.
Where your ego is just so big that you cannot physically let someone else have power over you.
Yeah.
And that's
Or any power at all.
weirdly enough, that's not good for a relationship. I know that's strange. I mean, it, sorry, I got yeah,
No, yeah.
I
No,
got a
yeah,
little,
I
I
think
got a little flashbacks there. So
look
sorry,
that's
some
funny. No,
trauma.
yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think yeah, you're exactly right about that. But I don't know. I think this is like that's kind of where my head went from the movie, but then also just a little bit outside of the movie in general too, where you do ask yourself where if there's 100 units of responsibility in a relationship, how is the distribution? Obviously, I think we would agree that it's dynamic and situational, and that it does move and it is a slider. But when addressing an audience as big as America, for example, like the movie does or the world, um, the answer does have to be fairly fixed. And so, where, if you had to, would you put that as a general question to the audience? Of I think that's what the movie addressed, and I appreciate that. And I think they did a very good job of leaving it open ended enough that it didn't imply too much, um, but that it also made people think. And I think that is a great thing for media to do nowadays, is not make decisions for the audience.
Yeah.
I'm a fan of that. I'm a fan
I,
of that.
unfortunately, that doesn't sell though. Too
This
much.
one sold.
Generally, in the
This
news
one
and
sold.
stuff, that doesn't sell. This one,
Because if you can stir
well,
enough without pushing too hard of an agenda, I think that's
but
awesome, and I think it'll sell because it'll inspire debate.
I just don't think people are that smart.
Unfortunately, I would I would agree.
Like, here's the thing: if the movie didn't have the brand that it had behind it, it would
Sure,
not have sold.
that's fair.
Let's just be honest,
That's
because
fair.
you see the Instagram posts of 10 girls going in dressed in all pink. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
They're not going to that movie if it's not
marketing,
Barbie.
which is I mean that's all that is marketing today is trend. You have to hit a trend, but I do agree that there are some um what's the expression, blind sheep that kind of follow, and they go to, well, I'll just leave it at media again. They go to media for decisions, like for someone else to make, or for that media to make decisions for them. I think, like we said, that is not something that I would try to have this conversation with someone like that. But I think it would be a good direction for movies to go in. To even, I mean, you could even probably do it with songs and books and all that. But movies in general, to stop making decisions for people and pushing messages that, well, essentially deciding things that shouldn't be decided for an audience. Because I think that's where a lot of people get uncomfortable, and a lot of people who do like that are actually weakening their own minds as far as that goes, formulating their own opinions. Because when someone else feeds you a message and you just take it on like it's 100% your truth, I have a disagreement with that. So, but yeah,
There you go. I mean, this was a bit more serious, I think, than the other
I like
the
it
our
though.
previous two. But if you're still here, shout out to you.
Yeah, shout
Thank
out to
you.
you. Leave a comment. Leave a
Leave,
comment about what you thought. Start a debate in the comments, and we'll probably respond.
yeah, I guess so. I mean, throw a comment out there. Thank you guys for sticking with it. I
Yeah.
like I said, not too much humor in this one, but a little bit more of a serious topic and like a worldly topic, I guess, that's happening right now. But
I think a relevant one, an important one. I think some of them will have thought behind them. Some will just be funny. Maybe we'll play some games soon or something.
yeah,
But yeah,
absolutely. So I think we're coming up on time here. Um,
like,
so we
comment, and subscribe. That's the first time we've said that.
okay, there you go. Like, comment, and subscribe. It's something you got to do. You just got to do it.
You got
Um,
it. The thumbs up.
thumbs up. But that's gonna do it for us today for Walk and Talk. Hope you guys enjoyed. We will be back next week for episode 4. What's that gonna be? I have no idea, but we're gonna figure it
Find out
out,
together.
and we're gonna see you then. Have a good week.
Goodbye, everyone.